Hey guys, lightboltjoe here. Today we're going to discuss the 2006 book by Justin Somper, Vampirates, Tide of Terror. I am going to read a little excerpt as to why it's such an amazing book series. I mentioned this with the first Vampirates book we talked about, that there are some moments in these books where your heart just races and you just want more information and more information. And there's a perfect excerpt from chapter 26, The Seed, in this book that I will read just to show you that level of anticipation, that level of wanting more of what's going to happen next. First and foremost, shout out to Justin Somper, the author, creator, genius behind this series. He had reposted and quoted me for my last review at trying to figure out why this still isn't a television series or film series. Probably more, it would do better as a television series. Like, Netflix just announced 2 days ago that they're doing a live-action version of Avatar: The Last Airbender with Brian and Michael, who were the original creators of the Nickelodeon show from 2004. So it's going to be fantastic. No more whitewashing of a cast that's supposed to be Asian, and I'm so excited for that. So excited for that TV series coming out, 2 years from now. But still, give credit where credit is due. So, plot of Tide of Terror. Vampirates, Tide of Terror. We start out, Grace is doing stuff, Connor's doing stuff. That are twins, Grace and Connor Tempest, right? It's been a couple months since Connor and the crew of the Diablo had rescued, quote-unquote, Grace from the Vampirate ship, which we actually later, at the very end of this book, find out the name of the Vampirate ship. It's called the Nocturne. So, the pirates on the Diablo, Grace and Connor Tempest are now a part of the crew of the Diablo, are going to pillage a, trading ship or something to that extent, but it turns out it was a setup, and that the captain, I'm going to butcher his name, Narcissus Draculus. I can't pronounce the name. I apologize, Justin, for not being able to pronounce the name, but point remains here and through. He tells Captain Mulugorath that his reign of inadequacy upon the waters, going from sea lane to sea lane, is done, and he needs to pay in blood. So Jez Stukely, who's a part of the Three Buccaneers, we have Connor, we have, oh my god, Bart. I was just about to forget his name. And Jez were the Three Buccaneers. Jez volunteers to fight one of Captain Draculus's men. They fight. Jez gets killed. My thing with Jez's character is that Connor then goes into this downward spiral of depression along with Bartholomew, because they lost their dear best friend. But I feel like Jez should have been introduced in the first book to elicit much more of a loss for us to feel for Connor. And then Jez obviously becomes an important character within this book series, because Sidorio, the outcast from the Vampirate ship, becomes a captain, and he makes Jez into a vampire. Now it's interesting because, like I said that in the first review of the first book, Justin creates his own mythology within these vampires, within this supernatural realm. So he has his own version of vampirism, which I think is really entertaining. Yes, he's done his research on 1800s vampire killings and transformations and stuff like that, much like how in MTV's Teen Wolf they go over a bunch of different versions of how to become a werewolf. You can get bit by a werewolf, you can get scratched by a werewolf, if you drink out of the puddle of a footprint of a werewolf, you become a werewolf. There's different mythologies represented in how to become a werewolf in Teen Wolf. So there's different mythologies of how to become a vampire within Justin's books. You don't necessarily need to be bitten in order to turn into a vampire. How Sidorio creates Jez, the vampire, Jez Stukely, into a vampire is he says this like ritual kind of a thing that he's trying to remember from when he was turned into a vampire way back in the day during Caesar's time. Again, this is 500 years in the future in the off the coast of Australia. The more I read it, and the more that the different ethnicities are involved, I see it more of a northwestern coast of Australia. So we're hitting tail end of the Philippines. You have parts of Japanese fleets coming through. You have more like Samoan Islands, that area of the Pacific, right? So Southwest Pacific, kind of a thing. Just in my mind. I could be wrong, but that's just what I've interpreted all of this. Another interesting thing is that the Pirate Academy is brought into this book. So, between the ages of 7 to 17, kind of a thing, you go to the Pirate Academy. Much like Hogwarts, the School of Witchcraft and Wizardry for your young wizards and wizards, witches and wizards, you have the Pirate Academy. So you can go to learn to be a pirate. But the Pirate Federation is a part of the Pirate Academy, and then Deputy Captain Chang Li was assigned to Maluko Rath's ship, the Diablo, to spy him for the Federation. And then Chang Li is a very interesting character, and I give her a lot of credit because she is a badass female, badass character in general, doesn't matter the gender, but she plays Two-Face very easily. So it's like, how can Connor trust Chang Li at one given point and then not trust her? How can Grace trust Chang Li at one given point but not trust her? We also are introduced to the headmaster of the Pirate Academy, Commodore Quo. So Chang Li convinces Connor and Grace to spend a week at the Pirate Academy. So majority of this book is actually at the Academy. So it's called Tide of Terror because that's Sidorio's mindset. He wants to create a tide of terror. We don't actually get into a tide of terror until like the last 3-ish chapters of this book, but that's fine because it's not necessarily to be taken at face value, tide of terror, an actual wave of blood, right? It's about facing your inner turmoil as well. All of us have a tide of terror flushing over us, tidal waving over us. How do we face those fears? How do we face those terrors? Smart. Justin's very smart. Very smart. He talks into astral projections, astral traveling. On the cover of this book, we have Grace literally traveling astral form from the Pirate Academy balcony all the way to the Nocturne over here. And this is Connor. Right? Genius. He knows his stuff. He knows his fourth dimensional stuff. We are also, what else? I was mentioning Commodore Quo. K-U-O? Quo? I don't know how to say it. I just say Quo. I could be wrong, but it's worked out so far. Commodore Quo. Headmaster Commodore Quo. In charge of the Pirate Federation, tries to convince Connor to stay a part of the Pirate Federation and join as a full-time student of the Pirate Academy, but then Commodore Ko and Chang Li convince Connor's new friend Jacoby Blunt, who's an awesome character, to hurt Connor in a duel for showmanship to test Connor's spirit, but Connor takes it as a betrayal by everyone, and he's like, the hell with you all, and then he goes back to Maluko Rath's ship on the Diablo. But because Sidorio has recruited more Vampirates from the Nocturne to join his Tide of Terror, so he has a crew of 5, including himself, steals and massacres Porphyrio Rath's ship. Porphyrio is one of Maluko's brothers. There's 3 Rath brothers. So then, after the betrayal at the Pirate Academy, Connor's like, the hell with you. He goes with Maluko. And they all wind up at Mos Kettle to devise a plan on how to defeat Sidorio and the crew, and his new crew of Vampirates on Porphyrio's ship. So then the Vampirate captain of the Nocturne does his whole astral thing and winds up in the middle of Mos Kettle's tavern as everyone is chanting and trying to figure out what kind of weapons to actually use to kill the Vampirates, to kill the villains, the 5 villains that wiped out almost an entire fleet of 150 men and women. So then Connor hears the whispers that Grace would always hear, because that's how the captain talks, in whispers in the head. Because he's above words. He doesn't need to vocalize. He's on a different plane. And the captain tells Connor to shout fire. So Connor indicates, Connor, again, 14 years old, in charge of an entire fleet at this point, as far as I'm concerned, that they're going to use fire against the Vampirates to destroy them. So then the plan is accepted. Connor then talks to the vampire captain at one point, and Connor gets this sense of familiarity of shaking the vampire captain's hand. Vampirate captain's hand. Can't talk. Which we then learn later on in the next few books. I won't spoil anything on that end. So the ending of this book, like I said, the last like 3-ish chapters of the Tide of Terror, after Sidorio and crew wipe out most of Porphyrio's ship, is the revenge. So it's all of the pirate captains are surrounding Porphyrio's old ship with Sidorio at the head, and they throw torches and light the whole ship on fire as a pyre, P-Y-R-E, pyre, which is like it's an old, like, how do I explain it? When you set a ship on fire for the dead. Like a Viking pyre. You put the Viking, like a classic Viking funeral, right? You put the body on the canoe and you set it to sail, and you light the boat on fire. A pyre. Pyre. You can have land pyres, tall, flamey things, and you burn the body. Okay, that was a horrible way of explaining it, but it was very visual. So they all wind up killing everyone. Jez tries to, like, say, no, I'm still Jez, and Connor's like, no, you're just the echo that the captain actually told me that you were. Things like that, the vampire captain. And then Sidorio is like, fire makes me stronger, it doesn't kill me. So then, like, he grows to be this 40-foot flame of demon, and which we get into later on in other books. But, like, Sidorio's not your average vampire. He's not your average vampire. He's like demon. So he disappears, but no my air quotes, no my shrugging. We haven't seen the last of him. Super suspenseful book. Again, primarily taking place at the academy with Grace trying to get back to the vampire ship. That's the other thing. Lieutenant Lorcan Fury has been blinded because he was trying to prevent Grace from going with Connor and the crew of the Diablo in the end of the first book. So then the entire time he's like rejecting his donor, and like Grace keeps astral traveling because of Darcy Fossman and the clattering that Lorcan gives her. This is all happening while they're at the academy. And then, like I said, there's a lot of different stories that go on within this book. So Grace eventually finally gets to physically the vampire ship. Talks to the captain, convinces Lorcan to go on deck with her, offers to be his new donor to give her blood. She doesn't actually give her his blood at the end of this book, but it's inferred that's what's gonna happen next. And they talk about the poeticness, poetry, I can't talk, of the relationship that donors have with the vampires, the takers. How the sense of immortality gets passed on to the donor as well, so long as that bond is still connected. Because then when Lorcan started to reject his own donor, Shanti, S-H-A-N-T-I, Shanti, then she started to get older. And she was talking about, you know, when the floods happened, I had nothing left, and I made a deal with the devil, the vampire captain, to maintain a life. And we don't actually know how long Shanti's been around for, but referencing the apocalypse, the end of the world, when the floods came. So it's a matter of, did the floods start from, in this version of the apocalypse, did the floods start from an atomic warfare? Did the floods start from global warming? Both? We'll see if it's mentioned again moving forward. Now, I am going to read, like I said, excerpt from chapter 26, The Seed. Again, so it's Grace speaking with Chang Li at the Pirate Academy at one point. Grace is trying to figure out what's going on, and there's the backstory. So this is an example, again, of why these series is important, is because it gets you going. It gets you, I want more information, I want more information. A reading. Grace sighed. They'd been over this so many times already. I was in the water, fighting for my life, and losing the battle, much like Connor was. You found me. And in the same way, Lorcan must have found me. I found Connor in the daylight, Chang Li said. The light was dying, but it was still daylight. I could never have seen him in the darkness, so Lorcan must have found me in the light too. But he can't have, can he? From everything we know now, Lorcan couldn't have come into the light. No, you're right. But there was the mist. Yes, the mist you found yourself in when you arrived on the ship. The same mist which came down when Connor and I were reunited on the deck. It's as if the Vampirates generate that mist themselves, Chang Li said thoughtfully. Could that be possible? Yes, Grace said, excitedly sitting up. I remember something now. I remember when I first arrived on the ship, the captain said something to Lorcan about moving me inside before the mist rose. It's not conclusive evidence, Chang Li said, but we're not dealing with hard facts here. It's my belief that the Vampirates, well, the captain at least, can create a mist to act as a protection for those who cannot usually go out into daylight. But they can't control how long it lasts. Wait, what is it? Grace asked, excitedly. Chang Li lay there, her eyes closed. It's close, Grace. There's something we're so close to, but it's just out of reach. She opened her eyes again. Do you think it's possible that you found the ship rather than it rescuing you? Maybe you are meant to save it. But it did find me. I was drowning in the ocean. There's no getting away from that. Yes, there is, Cheng Li said, suddenly sitting up straight. It all depends how you frame the story, doesn't it? Think outside the box, Grace. Grace had never seen Cheng Li so intense. Take yourself back to Crescent Moon Bay. Then before the storm, take yourself to the room at the top of the lighthouse. As Grace heard Cheng Li's words, she closed her eyes and pictured herself once more up in the lamp room, surveying the bay beneath her. Now what? She said. Take yourself back, Cheng Li said. Your father has died. The lighthouse has been repossessed by the bank. You're running out of options in that terrible town, and so, you look out to the ocean and you send a signal into the night to come and rescue you. What kind of signal? We don't know that. But a signal that you somehow knew how to make that and the Vampirates recognized. Grace gasped. What? Said Cheng Li. What is it? I think you're onto something, Grace said excitedly. I just remembered something that the captain said to me. It was the first night that I met him. What did he say? I asked him what he wanted from me, and he said, she could hear the whisper all over again. What do I want from you? Grace, it was you who sought me out, was it not? Grace opened her eyes again, finding Cheng Li staring intently into them. I thought he was just talking about that night, Cheng Li. I thought that he meant I had gone to find him on the ship. But what if he meant more than that? What if he meant that I had sought out the ship itself? Cheng Li nodded, as excited by the discovery as Grace. You've been asking the wrong question, Grace. It's an easy enough mistake to ask. The question isn't how you can get back to the ship. It's what do you want from that ship? What is it that connects you to the Vampirates in the first place? But I can't find that out until I'm back there, and we don't seem any closer to working out how I can do that than we were hours ago. Yes, we are, said Cheng Li, beaming. She slid off the bed, padded across the room, and unfastened the shutters. The breeze blew across them, carrying a spray of jasmine blossom inside. It's just as I thought, Cheng Li said, smiling at Grace. But why don't you just wait for another storm? Perhaps when the conditions are the same, history will repeat itself. Interesting. Whirlwind. These characters go through these trains of thoughts. It's fascinating. And more to come. Stay vigil, pirates. What's the saying for the Academy? Plenty and satiety, pleasure and ease, liberty and power. Hoorah. Vampirates, Tide of Terror, 2006. Sci-fi, fantasy, adventure, action book. I don't know what to classify it because it's got everything. More books to come. Vampire series is just golden books. Mucho mahalo, guys.